So Marc SCHMIDT at Mark My Words, the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing today, Glenn?
Awesome, awesome. Glad to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me. And I know we had some crazy schedule and stuff. Like my kids got a cold, and we had to push times and then push days and push times, and I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. In the months that I've been doing my podcast, I've had all kinds of scheduling changes and conflicts and last minute things that have come up, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, I know. And I've told a bunch of my guests on this show before. Like I thought with this quarantine, I'd get this podcast going, and me and the wife, we got a baby boy, so we've been hands on. I'm like, oh, I got all the time in the world. Podcast, start finishing scripts, start finish editing some projects that I have in the can, and I've never been more busier, and everything keeps getting pushed back, and like I got to reschedule and juggle times with, guests, like yourself and a bunch of other guests. I've had to like constantly change things up. So I thought I was going to have all the time in the world, and just realized in the last couple of months I've never been busier. So it's a blessing in disguise, And but Marc SCHMIDT, mark my words, Washington D.C., Baltimore area. I love it, and you're a fellow DMV. Uh, I guess, what do we call us? Broadcasters, filmmakers, that sort of thing. So,
I would love it if you called me a filmmaker, even though I have never actually made a film.
okay.
So,
Broadcaster,
yeah, I'm a
broadcaster,
broadcaster.
podcaster.
Filmmaker has a little more prestige, but to
Sure.
be truthful, I'm a broadcaster.
Hey, broadcasters, we have just as much prestige. I mean, I can check filmmaker, actor, broadcaster. I guess. I do have some credits to my name, but broadcaster, just as creditable as a filmmaker and actor. Absolutely.
Hey, with
Um,
all the stuff that I deal with at work, I definitely consider it credible.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your work. Tell me more about you, what you do, who you are, and what you've been up to.
well, I'll start with my own creative pursuits. I am a blogger and a podcaster, although the blogging has kind of gone to the wayside a little bit. I do love to write, but the podcast has been a big focus for me. So the podcast is Mark My Words, and it's about basically just bringing on people who are entrepreneurs and have side hustles that are really interesting and talking about career transition, maybe from a corporate life to more of like running your own life. And it's basically, from my perspective, to help people to see that there's more to having a career than just going to college, getting a corporate gig, and just working for the man. Like, you can be the man, you can run your own life, even though I don't really fully do that at this point. But
Yeah,
I can talk about what has inspired me to get into that and why I'm doing that. But for now, that's basically who and what I am and what I do.
awesome, awesome. Yeah. How about the corporate gig? Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I can. So I have been contracting around the DC area. You and I don't know if you noticed it for all your research on me, but we worked for the same company at one point. So
Is that Discovery?
we did work at
Yeah,
Discovery.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
And yeah, I worked at the broadcast center, I worked at the production center. I left in 2016 during the big preparation to restructure and all
Yeah.
that,
Mm-hmm.
which, I don't even know if we can talk about that or not, but, just to make it short, I left. I had a perspective of, okay, maybe I'll go to New York or LA to work,
Yeah.
but it never turned out that way because my wife wanted to stay where we are. She grew up in the New York area and she got a taste of like grass and mountains and trees, and she wanted to stay here. So for the past like 4 years, I've been contracting all around the DC area. And right now I have the glorious gig of broadcast technician at I can't even talk, Sirius XM.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm overseeing like the on-air health of like 300 or so channels all at the same time. No
Wow.
pressure. And
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple of guys that did that for Warner and did that for Comcast. And they were they were broadcast technicians overseeing, that sort of, maintenance of the broadcast health of channels or signals or signal. I think it was signal health or something like that. But yeah, for me at Discovery, it was more media asset management. And it was and I think my last time there, I think my last year there, I left in 09, Discovery Channel in Silver Spring. I left in 09. And I think I was doing a lot of those digitizing of assets. It was like my last little part was that. And then I left to go to a news station, and I worked at this independent news station, and doing a lot of international news and independent, freeform news. And I was pretty much full-time freelance from there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I like it. There's a way to, work for yourself and be the man. At the end of the day, I think regardless of how independent someone thinks they are, how entrepreneurial someone thinks they are, you're always answering to somebody. There's always, unless you create a product that is so high demand and it sells itself, then, maybe you are the top dog of that. But some sort of product or clothing line or energy drink or something. But at the end of the day, I still answer to, like, this is my show, but I even think in my mind, I answer to the viewers. I have to have a certain amount of content. And that's what kind of keeps me focused, is that I have to answer to maybe viewership. But, as a full-time freelance, filmmaker, broadcaster, live stream tech, something, I'm always answering to some sort of client or partner or colleague. Like, you have to step up and be at least a team player. So it's a tricky balance.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just in the amount of time I've been a podcaster, that feedback that I get from the people who watch and listen, I definitely take that into account.
Yeah.
And I guess when you put it that way, yeah, even as a podcaster, it's my show, but I still answer to those who take the time out of their day. They have a choice to do anything they want with their time, and they're choosing to listen or watch me. So I take that seriously.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of like the critique or the feedback. Yeah, is even just like views versus no views, or I wish, and I need to pay more attention to all those algorithms and whatever that stuff's called, that quantitative measurements of your YouTube, whatever, as far as analytics. Yeah, the analytics and all that stuff. But I mean, as far as this specific podcast, me and some colleagues tried to start it a couple times before and really kind of like bottomed out. But I definitely took advantage of the quarantine and the telework and the working from home. And for me, I think, from like March 15th to April 15th, there was nothing going on. So I spent that whole month editing side projects and, like, trying to build this up as a new product. And,
right.
and I just kind of stuck with it, and still, like 85%, I think, of the production force is still, virtual producing, virtual streaming or teleworking of some sort, all the production force. And so this is pretty much going to be the format until, for me personally, this is going to be the format until there's a vaccine anyway.
Well, I came into this year like already thinking about doing a podcast. So the past few years, I've been pretty active on LinkedIn, And what happened with LinkedIn is at first I'm like, okay, I'm gonna post my blog posts and just try to get a little bit of traction on that.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, I started to meet people in the DC Baltimore network.
Mm-hmm.
I started to just network with people around the world. And I started going to something called LinkedIn Local. And the very first event I went to, they had a bunch of content creators there who were like, hey, you should make content on LinkedIn. Just not any particular advice. They were just like, just do it. Just
Yeah.
do it. So I just was like, okay, sure, why not? And I had already, like, the one thing about me, I've always had in my gut that I wanted to put myself out there as a speaker or, be on camera, but just never did it, never had the confidence. But with that kind of support, I was like, okay, I'll just try it. I'll probably do it once or twice, and I won't do it again. But as I started to do it and got the good feedback and enjoyed doing it, I was like, hey, maybe I can, turn this into something. And people started just every once in a while just saying, you should be like a podcast host or do something like that. And I'm like, you know what? I might be crazy enough to try that.
Yeah.
So I got the equipment together and not a whole lot, a ring light, a mic, and a filter, and which is what I'm using to do this even. And that's all I really needed.
Yeah.
Just went from there and being a technical person, I wanted everything to be technically sound and right. But that journey, I'm really condensing the story on that. But the journey to go from just all I can really be is a writer behind the scenes to having the confidence to put myself in front of the camera. And to this point, pretty amazing the change. So
Yeah. Exactly. I
that's
mean,
how I
like,
wound up. That's how I wound up here.
yeah, because yeah, absolutely right. Because for years, for the last 15 years, I was, well, for the last 15 years, I've been crew. But about 5 years ago, I started delving into acting because in 2011, I enlisted in the National Guard. So part-time, military, but we had to go to basic training just like everybody else. And we had to go to, and I chose military police. I'm, hindsight, I'm kind of thinking maybe I should have chose public affairs, which is the military's word for media and photography. But, I chose military police, and then a colleague of mine who was, a cinematographer, editor, moved to Albuquerque and just decided to act. And as far as I know, like when he moved and started doing it, he didn't have any formal acting training. He's done a lot of formal acting training now, but it dawned on me, like, he doesn't have any formal acting training. But for me, after 5 years ago, say 2015, I'd already had about four years military service with the National Guard, military police, so military and law enforcement ish type of side work. I just kind of took that as, okay, there's my acting school. So I just jumped right in front of the camera, started submitting to, like, some casting notices, looking for officer this, detective that, sergeant this, major that, that sort of deal. And I booked a lot of acting gigs that way. And it was just that plunge, like when we were 5 years old, and it was time to just jump into the pool. We did that. And like you're saying, it's just take that plunge, and just get outside your comfort zone in such a way that you eventually make that your comfort zone. I totally agree. And it's just finding something different and strange to do, and just see how it clicks.
Yeah, you just never know where life is going to take you. You have
Hmm.
one idea, you might have a passion, and you go ahead and you pursue it, but you may come out the other end a completely different person, completely different perspective. And that's what happened with me, when I decided to get into broadcasting and television production, I had a couple of different ideas of how that was going to go down. But now, being on the other end, like 15 years after I graduated from college, I never would have guessed I'd be where I am now. So
Yeah,
you just never know how it's almost like life knows more about you than maybe you know about your own life. If that
absolutely.
makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Somehow the universe knows.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't agree with you more. And me and previous guests have always using the word blessed, and I keep talking about how I feel like I'm blessed. I just can't figure out when. Was I blessed with hindsight earlier to always jump on, a number of texts? I was blessed with the hindsight to. I always wanted to write and produce and direct, narrative Hollywood films, and I figured, okay, let me since I have some military background, let me jump into acting, play a bunch of roles like that. It'll get me on set. It'll fill in the blank spots on the schedule. But then, I saw live streaming becoming and podcasting becoming, this new thing, and especially live streaming being this new technical demand, you know. And this was years ago. I've been live streaming. I've been a live streaming tech for a number of different rosters and clients, and all these different corporate and industrial events. For about 4 years now, maybe live streaming. And now that's all it is right now, is virtual live streaming, even more so. Just like setups similar to this podcast, and I somehow blessed, whether it was 10 years ago, to always just you know have if you're going to have a fall. And also it was always this um idea to, like, if I'm going to have a fallback within the universe. It's not going to be realty, it's not going to be cars or plumbing. The fallback will be something that I don't necessarily want to do the rest of my life, but it will be within film and TV. And then I can take that and I can put it into a podcast, or I can take that and I can put it into like some ultra experimental project, web series, something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, there came a point. So when I left Discovery, and I got to a point where, so when I left, I was a manager in my department, and that was obviously something I've been pursuing to climb up the ladder a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it, and it was very fulfilling. Just the interactions with the staff and making a difference with them had a huge difference in my life. But when I left, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to land another job
Yeah.
like it. Because when people look at my resume, and I've written my resume several different versions and have had a number of different angles to it
Mm-hmm.
to show my ability, and it hasn't seemed to matter. It's like, this is a technical person. They know technical stuff. So I feel like I'm a little bit pigeonholed.
Yeah.
And as a result, over the past few years, I came to realize I'm not really as fulfilled as I was. And that was a turning point for me. That's when I started looking internally, and I said, how did I get here? Why did I get to this point to begin with?
Yeah.
And it all went back to when I was growing up, and I used to sit and write all the time, and was a huge fan of like cheesy sitcoms, growing up in the 80s.
Oh
And
yeah.
I obviously I had a pretty big passion for the technical end of it. I used to play with black and white TVs and break them, and try to pull in all kinds of channels on the UHF when
Mm-hmm.
that was a thing. And I realized, I'm like, there was a point in time where I wanted to become like a screenwriter and had ideas, and one in particular based on my time in high school. So I'm like, look, what am I doing? I should be at least trying to pursue some of these things that I've always dreamed of doing. And that's when it really started to change, because I started writing that book slash screenplay for that story that I've had in my mind
Yeah.
for many years. And it's still not finished, but what it did is it got me thinking about myself and what I want to do and what fulfills me, rather than just climbing up the corporate ladder for, a brand or a company. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know my tone of voice makes it sound like I'm down on that, and I'm not. But I think I just personally got to a point where I said, I think I need something else. And that's when I started looking internally. And that's when I started the LinkedIn stuff, the blog, the podcast. And even now, I haven't been able to be as creative as I'd like to be. I've been pretty busy off and on this summer, just trying to juggle work and everything else. And that creative fire, it's just, I start thinking about all the things I can do and want to do. And I'm just like, okay, that's definitely something I have to listen to more and pursue it, because I obviously want to be doing something in that regard, something creative. So,
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
make a long
definitely.
story short, I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you know, how would you say you've been impacted by these current times, and have you, taken advantage of this time? But also,
Um,
how have you been impacted as well?
oh man, we could probably do a whole episode just on this one topic. Um, I will try to make it pretty short.
Okay.
So, when the pandemic really hit in like March 11th, March 12th,
Mm-hmm.
where I work, obviously we have all those big brands, MLB, NBA, like they broadcast everything there.
Yeah.
So when we were getting all these calls that everything was being postponed, canceled, pushed back, and we were down to not a whole lot of live programming, like it hit me real hard because I was on the forefront of all those changes. I was actively making those changes, getting calls from like MLB. Like I'm a huge baseball fan, and that's like a huge punch in the gut to get that call. And they're like, we're gonna go on live and we're gonna tell everybody that we're postponing the season. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, crazy. And so much changed in like a really like crazy short amount of time. And it was beyond stressful. And it was so stressful that on Saturday, I have kind of a weird schedule. I work Thursday through Monday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I
I,
had,
me- I remember that with Discovery Channel. Yeah,
yeah.
I started off with a funky schedule. Yeah.
So I endured two crazy, like really, really insane days. I woke up, and I wake up pretty early, like 3 in the morning. My alarm went off, and I remember just laying there and slamming down my charger cord because I just did not want to get up.
Yeah.
I did not, I can't ever remember a day where I was like, I just absolutely don't want to face, like, facing this day makes me angry.
Yeah.
So that is how I was feeling. And that morning also turned out to be a turning point because for Christmas, oddly enough, my wife, she is big on like, you know, boxing and all that kind of stuff. I bought her like a punching bag and some gloves, and they had, oddly enough, they had gone unused. But I just kept thinking as I was getting ready for work, I was like, I should get out those gloves and just Like I had all this energy pent
Yeah.
up. I tried meditating. I tried listening to like Enya. I tried all
And
this.
yeah,
I
yeah,
tried all this stuff, and it wasn't helping.
yeah.
But before work, I'm like all dressed, ready for work. I'm like, get out the gloves. So I go into our little workout room, and I just started beating the crap out of the punching bag.
Yeah.
I did it for like 5-10 minutes, and I took off the gloves. I was like, I think I feel pretty peaceful. I'm ready to go to work.
Just get all that aggression out. Absolutely. Yeah.
I've never felt that way in my entire life. And from that moment on, I have had the mentality mentally of like, look, I'm going to fight this situation, this virus, this whatever. Like mentally, I'm going to stay that strong through this whole thing. It just really taught me that, you know what, I can get through this. I can, continue working. I can continue, life goes on. You just have to adjust and learn the deal. And so from there, I had already been kind of getting my podcast started up, and it was an opportunity for me to, book my guests and to make that kind of time. Although I've turned out to be a lot busier, as you pointed out, than I expected. I think I probably would have gotten more episodes in by now last year with the way things were, as
Hmm.
opposed to this year. It's weird how that's turned out.
Yep.
So I've basically just been dealing with everything with that mentality. Like, look, you know, life is just full of surprises and challenges, and this is obviously a big one, but I have to just approach it with strength and balance and, just take care of myself and my world, and you just do the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't agree with more. I can't agree with you more. And I just think, it's, I'm kind of humbled by, the way things worked out for me and the wife. And the first month, we started getting a little bit of the Shining cabin fever, going on. And so I thought, like I'll kind of make a joke out of it. And I shot a bunch of videos, and there's another web series I have, and it's kind of like a docu-series. And before, it was all about, the different gigs and all the different traveling, and some of the stuff me and the wife did, some of the stuff me and the colleagues and friends would do, traveling and acting gigs, film gigs, just different adventurous stuff, maybe road trips, and all sorts of that stuff fell into that web series. And I said, okay, well, here we are, and it's just we're stuck in this house. And I did a couple episodes about that. But then this podcast took over. I haven't done an episode of that one because this podcast has just been like nonstop, and the response rate and people being interested on coming on. I just kind of took advantage of that. But I did kind of like a joke, kind of like therapeutically. I took scenes from The Shining and I would put memes over it, and I made it as if like if Jack Torrance and Danny Torrance and the wife, I forget, sadly I forget her name, but was it Shelley Duvall's character? If they were stuck in that mansion, but it's quarantine, and it's he's walking down the hall, and he's like smashing those pots and pans, and the meme and the headline is making bottles at 4 a.m. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like tying that into what I'm dealing with now. At the time, I think my son Gabriel was 1 month old, and but I remember that day, March 12th, and the wife called me. I was on set. I was on a set, and they decided to strike, wrap, we're done. We didn't the event didn't even happen, but I was on location. And as we're striking, the wife is freaking out, and it felt like day zero of The Walking Dead. Like the first, you know, was that Doomsday Preppers, and start stocking up and bunker down, and batten down the hatches type of kind of freaking out. But once I did that, once we just stocked up on. You remember the toilet paper days?
The toilet paper day. Oh, the toilet paper day.
The toilet paper
How
days.
soon I forgot. Yes.
Yeah, it seems like years ago, but it was only like 6
does.
months ago. Like toilet paper, hand sanitizer. So yeah, we were kind of slick and we stocked up a little bit on what we had to stock up on, and we never hit any, emergency kind of rations, anything like that. We were kind of slick and smart about it. But yeah, man, I mean, it was just okay. Now that we're hunkered down, babe, I built this studio. And she's like, maybe you can redo that podcast that you and your colleagues. And I was, oh yeah, I was thinking that. And I'm gonna edit these projects. And it was a crazy schedule we started off with, because she'd be up from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'd be up from like maybe noon to midnight. And so we'd have like this crossover where all three of us are together. But then I would take him at night and I'd put him in, like, we had a number of different little contraptions he could sleep in. And he would sleep in this one little bassinet by my edit, and I'm just like on Final Cut all night. And then she'd wake up, and I'd spend the day with her, and then maybe I would go to bed at like 8 p.m. I don't know. I'd sleep like towards the afternoon. I would take like this long nap during the day, and it was like this crazy kind of like overlap that we had. And then she would have them during the day, and I would have them. And I would have him like in the evening, and then put him to bed. But at that point, that was when he, like the kid was sleeping for 2 hours, up for an hour, sleeping for 2 hours, like 1 month old. I can't even remember now what his schedule is like, but because now he's sleeping through the night like a normal human being. But yeah, man, it's just like making the best out of the situation. I mean, that's all we can really do, is just adapt, adjust, adapt, and overcome, and that sort of deal. So have you been watching anything, studying, binge reading, binge watching, using, trying to escape or trying to, like, sharpen skills on anything?
Well, I, for one thing, binge watching. So I feel like I have like a billion shows that I'm going through methodically that I'm just never going to finish. But there are some that I actually finished. I know recently Cobra Kai came to Netflix.
Yeah.
And I watched that in like a 24-hour period, like 2 seasons. It was terrific.
Yep.
I loved it. Otherwise, I've been watching a lot of stuff on like HBO Max. So
okay.
I've been going back to like the Flintstones. So I've been watching that, and they got a lot of great old school cartoons on there. I think they have the Smurfs, and we'll have that on record, on video, that I am also watching the Smurfs.
Well, that's what platform is that?
HBO Max.
Oh, HBO Max. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so
they've got all of the well, not all, but it feels like it's all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. They've got, oh man, like the Jetsons, the Flintstones, Josie and the Pussycats. They've even got like Tom and Jerry on there.
Yeah, that might be something I have to look into for the kid, because we got Disney Plus, and we're showing them Winnie the Pooh whenever we get a chance. We try not to put them in front of the TV too much just yet, but when we do, it's pretty much just play Winnie the Pooh on Disney Plus. But yeah, HBO Max is definitely like something we're considering. But we've got so many different platforms. We're just like, how are we going to add another one? There's just so much stuff to watch. Just we have, I think we have Prime, Hulu, Netflix, and Disney Plus, and those are the paid ones. And I've got watch lists and queues on all the free ones too, like Vudu and Tubi, and what's that other one? Pluto, Vudu, Tubi, and Pluto. I mean, it's just never ending. There's just too much stuff out there to like catch up on. So I'm trying to like start knocking stuff out on some of these playlists, on Netflix at least.
Yeah, I am on the same boat. I mean, I'm watching Community. I never watched it when it was on, and I'm like, I'm digging this show. So that's something I'm working on, and then a show that I watched when I was young because my sister always watched it, Little House on the Prairie. That's on Prime. I've been watching that too.
With is that Michael Landon from
That is Michael Landon.
Michael
Yeah.
Landon? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man,
So,
what was it? Highway to Heaven?
yeah, I never watched Highway to Heaven, but Little House on the Prairie, I was definitely into that.
Yeah,
So,
I think when I was young, I wasn't into Little House on the Prairie, but I think I watched enough of Highway to Heaven, you know, to be able to remember his name. That's how I remember his name, because I remember he died during like the last season of Highway to Heaven, or maybe they wrapped, maybe they closed out Highway to Heaven, maybe they ended Highway to Heaven and then he passed or something.
yeah, he
I
died in
remember when he
like
passed.
1991, I think it
Yeah.
was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So what I'm trying to say is I watch all kinds of stuff. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I just started Designated Survivor. So I think a day or two ago, I finally finished Tiger King. I finally watched it. All throughout the quarantine, I never watched it. When the quarantine first started was when that was released, and everybody was talking about Tiger King during, you know, the height of the quarantine.
yeah.
And I finally, it took me about a day to knock that thing out.
Wow.
It's just too much. It's so insane. It's just so crazy that it's, you know, what's the phrase? It's too bizarre for real life or something, but it's all, you know, real life. It's an incredible series. But
Well, I watched one episode. My wife happened to be around, and she was like, "No, I hate this show. I don't want to see this show." So I never finished it.
yeah, yeah,
But I know what you mean.
my wife never wanted to watch it. All the hype, and she still didn't want to watch it. She goes, "I don't want to watch people getting eaten by tigers and lions." I'm like, they're not going to actually show that.
Yeah.
I don't think they can. I don't think they can show that.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about it, and you might see some scenes were blurred out. They were, but you're not going to actually see that. You're going to hear about it a lot, and they talked about it a lot. But no, it's definitely knock that out like as quick as possible. You have to. I think everybody I think everybody on planet Earth has to. That's like one of those shows that you have to just watch. You got to see it to believe it. But no, it was fantastic, and I'm glad I finally, you know, pulled the trigger on that one. But now it's Kiefer Sutherland time. I mean, everything and anything he's in is like awesome. Even some of like I've seen some of his B movies. You remember when Kiefer Sutherland went to like these B movies in the mid to late 90s?
Yeah.
What was it? There was this movie Desert Saints I watched on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely B level. You know, I think they really wanted to be one of those kind of like those, you know, interesting desert indie action flicks, but it was so B level and it was still good. You know, he's still awesome
Yeah.
in it, you know. And then he got 24. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Bauer was like the ultimate, you know, career, like built a dynasty for this guy. But
Yeah.
but Designated Survivor is like, it's pretty cool. I'm only into like the second episode of the first season, but
Yeah. My wife and I watched that show like while it was on ABC, and we had good intentions of finishing the Netflix episodes. I guess season 3 or whatever it was. I don't even think we finished it. It has nothing to do with the quality of the show. It's still a pretty good show. It just tells you how many choices we have.
yeah, man, dude, I'm the biggest Marvel DC fan, and I was somewhere in between like the second to last season of Arrow, and those shows, the whole Arrowverse series, all the Arrowverse series, Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and I know I'm missing one. I feel like I'm missing one. I watched those religiously, and then somehow I just got off it, and I'm like, oh my god, now how do I catch up? Because there's
Well,
just so much.
there's so much content, so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then, because Supergirl is like the one show that I was really like committed to in that whole universe, and there's just too many crossovers, and they think they're doing a good thing by, yeah, this is gonna be awesome if the Flash and Supergirl, and we'll throw in Superman, and we'll throw in whoever. It's like, okay, slow down. It's a little much for me.
No, I mean, I agree. I agree to an extent. I think the best thing that DC and Warner has is the Arrowverse. They botched the DCEU, and well, I take that back. I think the best thing that DC and Warner has is the animated universe. But the second best thing they have to like the live action, the Arrowverse, and you can still see how they botched it. And they're even kind of, they still botched it because Supergirl, I think, was on NBC or ABC. And then, but Flash and Arrow were doing so well that and Legends, I think, just started, that they brought Supergirl into the Arrowverse through the multiverse. And then they found themselves in the same predicament they did in the comics back in the 80s with all these different universes. So they did the whole Crisis on Infinite Earths thing within the show, just like they did to fix the comics. They did it with that show. And I haven't caught up to that point yet to see how everybody's now in the same universe somehow. I mean, I'm figuring that's how they're going to do it, is because Supergirl was like on Earth 2 and Flash and Arrow were on Earth 1. And so the only way for them to like team up to help each other is that either Supergirl can run really fast and or Flash would run really fast and break through the dimensional barrier to like, and it was like, come on. And now so they did like a whole, mega crossover event that was the Crisis on Infinite Earths to fix the show, because they found themselves in the same predicament they were in 40 years ago with the comics. And it's like, oh my God, here we go again. But it's kind of like, okay, we'll make fun of our old predicament by fixing this new predicament, but
you've clearly invested a lot of time in this universe.
Well, I have my own web series. One's based in DC, one's based in Marvel. So I had to do quite a bit of research. I mean, I read comics when I was a kid, and Superman was my guy when I was a kid. Superman, I was the biggest Superman buff, all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, until Michael Keaton's Batman came out in '89, and it was just like, that was the number one, man. Like that was life-changing. Seeing it, and I think I saw that in the theater. I think I was 9 years old when I saw that in the theater. It was incredible.
So I have an interesting story about that movie. So I think I was 10 when I went to see that movie. And at the time, so before that, the only thing I knew about Batman was Adam West and Burt Ward. And I thought that it was going to be all groovy and pow and bam. And here it was like this dark thing. And I remember going to the movie, I'm like, this isn't like all groovy and fun. This is like serious. And for years, I was like kind of down on that movie. Then one day, it's like 20 years later, I saw it randomly on Movie Channel or something. And I was just like, oh, the 10-year-old me was so dumb. This is a great movie.
Oh, I'm not saying you're dumb, but I'm not saying you're dumb, but I'm totally agreeing with you on like how awesome that movie was. And I kind of might have had a little bit of experience with the Adam West show. I can't really remember, but I remember that movie, and that movie just blew me away. It was just, I mean, yeah, it was very dark, very gothic, very, very mature, very intense movie. And I think it just had like this perfect mixture of, this vigilante, this vigilante that won't kill. He's a bat, he's the symbol of fear, but he's also the symbol of hope. It was pretty mature, for I think it was PG, but it was pretty mature of a superhero movie. It was so different than Superman, because I remember some of the first movies I saw were the original Star Wars trilogy, and like Superman 1, 2, 3 with Richard Pryor, the first 3 Christopher Reeve movies, and the first 3 Star Wars movies. And seeing this was definitely life changing. Like it's, you know, it's a darker world out there, but there is this, but it was also goofy at the same time, you know, like,
Yeah.
and like and then the toys, all the toys and all the merchandise, you know, like I ate that up as a kid. And then the animated series that directly followed Batman Begins. I mean, it was Batman Begin. I'm sorry, no, Batman Returns, and then the animated series, and it was just like 1, 2, 3. It was just like Batman. It was just incredible. It was just incredible, all the way up to like maybe I think it was 12. I think it was 12 and 13, and when the Batman the animated series went off the air, it was just like, and so I was always so of who I knew. I mean, I knew who Superman was. You know, he was a Kryptonian, Kryptonite, Smallville, raised by humans. That's where he got his beliefs of truth, justice, and the American way, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But then, as far as Batman goes, I knew Batman, I knew Gotham, I knew all the villains, I knew their backstories. I knew the whole Bat family. You know, Batman, Batgirl, Batwoman, Robin, Nightwing. You know, all the sidekicks. So, and then, you know, I kind of fell off and, like, you know, got into sports a little bit in high school and middle school and high school, and then kind of fell off. Definitely fell off of sports and got into girls and partying in college and filmmaking. And then, but then as I started getting to filmmaking, as I went to film college, was kind of like the return of the superhero movies. Blade was the biggest return of the Marvel franchise anyway. And you had, you know, Blade 2, and then you had X-Men come out, and then the rest is history, man. Then you got Fox's superhero movies, you got, you know, MCU, you got Sony's Spider-Man, and just the rest is history from there. And it was just like a matter of finding, you know, inexpensive, you know, a budget-friendly kind of production hacked way of pulling off a series. And you know, we can talk offline, and I can send you links to that. But the links to my stuff is in the description, as well as, you know, mark my words, Marc stuff. But moving on, you know, talking about, you know, the podcast, your podcast, and your links. What's next on the agenda? Say 6 months to a year from now. What's next on the agenda for Marc Schmidt?
Good question. Right now, I am at a point, so I just got approved to go live on LinkedIn, which is kind of hard to do.
Oh, okay.
It's not something that you almost have to like state your case for why you should have that privilege.
Oh, very cool.
It took them like 2 months to approve it. So,
wow.
Yeah, it took a long time. So, I've been going live a little bit solo just to kind of get my feet wet with it a little bit. But I definitely want to use that platform because I have a connection following that's growing, you know, at a good pace more and more. And that I definitely want to like keep working on and make some good connections, maybe get some more good collaboration going. And really just my goal 6 months to a year is just to continue growing my podcast and maybe try to figure out and learn how I can use that to maybe, you know, turn it into a, I hate to say this because the goal ultimately is to put myself out there, talk about myself, have people come on and talk about themselves. But ultimately, I'd like to turn into something somehow that I can be a little more self-reliant for myself, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
To
Yep.
be the non-money grubbing way to put that. But I really just want to spread my wings and try to figure out how I can turn what I'm trying to do into a full-fledged business for myself.
Absolutely.
And much like you, the creative juices and wheels are always spinning. I've thought about maybe just creating some kind of video series and doing some like voiceover over it and
Mm-hmm.
just talking. And I would like to continue writing the story that I have. So that's something that it keeps bothering me. I keep getting ideas of ways to write a chapter or ways to write a particular part of the story out. So it's just stuff like that that I really want to try to work on. But I would say the most bankable thing is to grow the podcast and continue doing things like this and speaking and getting myself out there more, because I've been through a lot in my life and have had a lot of obstacles thrown my way. So that's something that I've gained a good, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of wisdom has
Mm-hmm.
come through all that. So I really want to continue putting that out there and just, you know, talking about myself, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Telling your own story, sharing your own story. And at the same time, it's not necessarily selfish because you're also sharing other people's stories as well. So
No,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love, like, when I do a podcast, and this is the first time I've ever been a guest on a podcast. So this has been an amazing experience. But when I run my own podcast, when I click the leave meeting button, I end the record, it completely changes my mood for the whole day. Like, I feel the power, like what I get back from it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not so much what I'm doing or what I'm taking, it's what I get back from others. Like, this interaction, I'm gonna be in a great mood the rest of the day.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something about connecting and getting to know somebody like this on this level is amazing. Like, I don't really know how to describe it, but it just puts me in a great mood. And I guess maybe it's just that common goal of both sides. We're both creative, and we want to produce a product that people will enjoy tuning into, and maybe just being a part of that process is what energizes me. But hopefully along the way, people will be inspired by me. I mean, I'm somebody who, I was born with cleft lip and palate, and also came with some other issues as well. And I know a lot of people counted me out. I'm sure a lot of people I grew up with who find me on Facebook, they're probably shocked as heck that I'm doing all the things that I'm doing. And you just don't always think, I guess I feel like I'm one of those unlikely people to be doing all the things that I'm doing. So it really, I feel like it's important for me after everything I've been through to put myself out there and to talk about myself and to hopefully give people some kind of inspiration and make them, even if they don't have the same obstacles as me, maybe they'll be like, if this guy can do what he's doing, then I can do it too.
Absolutely.
Because there's a time where there was no chance, no way, no how that I would get on camera like this and talk. And even though I
Yeah.
wanted to do it internally, but I was like, nobody's gonna listen to me. Like, who's gonna listen? Who's gonna watch? And luckily for me, when I was in my 30s, I really went through a lot of change and growth and met a lot of really great people who helped me to see that I have a lot more to offer than I may have. Like, I just always had that war within myself of wanting to do stuff, having the confidence, but yet not believing that maybe the world would respond to it the way I wanted it to, or just, you know, I would see it myself. Like, I see myself when I watch any of my podcasts back. I'm like, that's pretty good. I sound fine. I'm doing great. Like, what was I so insecure about?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm hoping people will get out of it. In addition to everything else I'm doing, I hope people are just like, wow, this guy, he's not letting anything stop him. He's doing it. I can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree. I can't agree more. I mean, I'm sure there's more behind, my podcast. There's absolutely more behind, but I think it was just, I think for my podcast, Zombie SquadCast, it just spawned from like, what's there to do during the quarantine? Let's find something to, like I had a colleague. I said, hey, come on, let's do a podcast. He's like, what's the agenda? What's the objective? What's the agenda? And I'm like, dude, just come on here and let's shoot the shit. Like, who cares? There's nothing else going on. And it's like, I think the episode with you is probably gonna end up being like 72 or 73 or something. Like I just stuck with it.
Wow.
And I just, like I figured out a way to kind of make the technical aspect, and I know you can agree with me, the technical aspect, the production aspect, the gear. I just figured out a way to make that turnkey so that everything else was like just chatting and just, exchange of ideas and nothing's really original anymore. It's just, I think what's original or semi-original is just honesty and just like kind of like a laissez-faire, maybe just shooting the shit kind of deal, and
Right.
and honesty and openness, and that's really all this is. I mean, I know like the title, some people are thrown off by the title. I'm like, it's not zombies, but like, we started me and my colleagues started Zombie Squad, and that's a brand from a brand of our brands. And so just to stick within our brand of a brand, Zombie Squad. Well, hey, squad rhymes with pod, so SquadCAST. And I probably should have just named it SquadCAST instead of Zombie SquadCAST. But there's a whole another long history behind the meaning of Zombie Squad. But that's for like a whole nother episode in and of itself. But yeah, I can't agree with you more. It's just putting yourself out there and experimenting and trying new things. And I'm amazed, especially with folks like you that have had obstacles and challenges and difficulties, maybe outside the norm of obstacles and challenges and difficulties growing up. I mean, I took a look at your name of your podcast, Mark My Words. I mean, it's so simple, but it's brilliant. Like when go ahead.
No, I wish. I appreciate you calling it brilliant, and it is brilliant, but I didn't even come up with it.
Okay.
It was a Twitter follower from like my blogging crew.
Mm-hmm.
So she at some point, I think her handle is recipes for every soul. Always try to give her props. Early on, my blog is called Marcs World .blog is the site, and it was like really all I could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy up in Philadelphia on Channel 6 News when I was growing up. His name was Don Pollock, and he always did this thing called Don Pollock's World, and I loved him. I thought he was like this quirky, zany, like off the wall kind of guy, all kinds of weird stuff. And I almost felt like, well, that's kind of similar to what my blog is doing. I'm doing all kinds of weird, like random stuff. It's like a lifestyle blog. It's not like, I'm going to help you, with cars or whatever. Like, it's just all kinds of random stuff. So that's what I based the name on. And she was like, oh, you should have called it, Mark My Words. I'm like, oh, man.
And I tell you what, yeah. I mean, I get hit with some of that stuff sometimes. I'm like, oh, it was in front of my face the whole time,
Yeah, so I wish that I would have thought of it, but I didn't. So, but I
Yeah.
told her, I was like, can I use that in the future? She was like, yeah. So,
Yeah, no, I mean it's such a great name. I mean, it's so simple but brilliant, you know. Because I remember hearing that like in movies, you know, like mark my words, and you know that sort of deal. So yeah, that's a great name. Um, what's your view of the new normal?
uh, you know, I don't know if I like to call it like the new normal.
Hmm.
I want to call it more like hopefully the temporary normal,
Yeah,
because to me, the new normal means that it's gonna be like this moving forward indefinitely, and
yeah,
I want to believe that it's not gonna be that way. That we're gonna get a vaccine because the way things are going, we have to get a vaccine because
yeah,
people just are social. They need to be out. And because of that, we're having like such a hard time keeping those numbers down. So we need a vaccine. So hopefully once something like that happens, everything will return to the way it was. And I don't mean to twist that around and, be like, well, I don't believe that. And, you know, but I guess I don't know. I mean, to view it the way everybody else is viewing it, the new normal. I mean, just to stay in context and not be political about it. Um, I I mean, I think you just gotta go on with your life. Just do the best you can, and life is not always gonna be sitting around and playing video games and hiding away from the world. Like, this is real life.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter anymore how we got here or why. This is our reality, and we have to do the best we can to take care of ourselves and maintain balance in our lives and just keep everything in perspective. And I think more than anything, I've been learning to keep things in perspective because relating to all the boxing stuff I was talking about, if you keep everything in perspective and can just be like, you know what, at the end of the day, I might have had a bad day at work. Something might not, that was important to me, might not have gone the way I wanted it to, but I'm stable, I have my health, and I have another chance to do better tomorrow.
yeah.
And I think those are the kind of things you gotta keep in mind during this new normal. And that's how I'm trying to live and manage. And hopefully I'm doing a good job.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, man. Well, have you been back to, how do you call it, the broadcast center? Have you been back to the broadcast center yet?
I haven't been back there in almost 10 years.
No, I mean, with Sirius.
Oh yeah. I never left. Anytime somebody says broadcast center, I
Oh,
just
you
think
think
Discovery.
Discovery? No, with what do you, well, whatever you call it with Sirius. Have you been back working on location, or are you just teleworking?
I have been on location the entire time.
Oh wow, you're going into work every day.
I have gone to work. So in March or April, there was a stat on CNN. I'll never forget. I was at work. We have two big monitors up. I see the news all the time. They said 97% of the country was either at home or working from home. I was the 3% that won the lottery and was
Yeah,
still at work. And not only that, but the people that are on staff where I work, they have an arrangement where they're only at the office like a couple days a week and they're working from home the rest of the week.
yeah,
And I'm under contract. I'm the only person in the building, I think, who has worked 5 days a week through this entire thing, like every week.
Well,
So
I guess the plus side is you're not you're there's very few people there, so you're at least safe, right?
yeah, no, it's been really great. I
Yeah.
feel to give the company good PR. They've done a lot of really good things. I think they've done a great job of keeping everybody as safe as they possibly can.
Awesome.
And there's been no issues on that front. And, I've been there at work more than anybody, and I have not gotten sick or any issues to this point. So you gotta hand it to them for that. And they provide free breakfast and free lunch.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's to keep everybody from going out and grabbing food and
Yeah.
maybe coming in contact. It's like everybody can eat on site. So I feel like they're doing a pretty good job of keeping everybody, especially somebody like me, safe from getting sick. So
Absolutely.
the company just now got tremendous PR from me. So
Yeah. I mean, that's great. Yeah. I mean, like I've always butted heads, like directors or producers or, some clients in the past, way in the past that, hey, spend a few extra $100 and, you'll maintain that $1 million contract that if you spend a few extra $100 on this, that, and the other thing. And, it sounds like they're doing that. Like, hey, we're just going to provide free breakfast and lunch to the employees that have to be on site. And, that's a great thing. That's fantastic. Well, any last points, any last bit of advice for our viewers?
I mean, my advice really is, pick yourself off, and uh, that didn't come out right at all. So maybe think before you speak, first of all.
Okay.
Uh, I always like to quote Aaliyah, dust yourself off and try again. I brand myself as a resilient person, and I've almost had to be. I mean, I've always done kind of like my own thing, even with my projects, my blog, my podcast. Like, I'm doing my own thing. I'm running the show. And I have always learned throughout my life that, especially during a year like this, which even for me, and I went through this today when I did my little live broadcast on LinkedIn, just talked about how even though I've had all these obstacles in my life leading up to this year, this has been a doozy of a year, even for somebody like me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's been very, very challenging, and I've had to just maintain that fighter mentality of just, be resilient, dust yourself off, try again, keep working at it, and just know that if somebody like me is putting themselves out there, being pretty fearless about it, and they're doing it, and they're feeling comfortable in their own skin, that they should think if, they have a desire, even if it's not putting yourself out for a podcast or on camera, but if it's just something else, just go do it. Just try it. The best thing you can do for yourself is just do it and try it and learn from it. You're either going to get better, or you're going to find that it's not for you and you can move on to the next thing. So, all that jumbled up information, I think, is my advice.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, it wasn't all that. It wasn't jumbled up. No, it makes perfect sense and fantastic. Marc Schmidt, mark my words. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Any socials, links, plugs you want to put out there?
Well, you can find Mark My Words on YouTube. You can find it on iTunes, I think Google, Spotify, some other places that I can't think of, but those are like the main ones. If you want to read my blog, which I just auto renewed, so now I definitely gotta write some new material. Don't want that money to go to waste. So Marky Mark's World, and Marky is spelled Marky, then it's Marcs MARCS World.blog, and it's like a lifestyle blog, and there should be some new material. I was doing a series on turning 40 and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I haven't done that in a while, but check that out. I'm on Instagram. The screen name Nimrod79. I'm a big Green Day fan. Obviously, born in '79, so that's where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, Nimrod79. Yeah, and then LinkedIn. Please come find me on LinkedIn. And especially if you're an entrepreneur and you want to talk about being a guest, I'm always looking for guests for the podcast. So, yeah, come find me, Marc Schmidt, MARC, not MARK. And yeah, come find me on LinkedIn. Come find my blog. Come find my podcast.
You got it. Yeah, maybe I might have to come find you and jump on your podcast as well.
Yeah, love to have you.
Sooner than later. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Marc Schmidt, Mark my words, Marky Mark's World. Marc, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It was a great time, great chatting with you. A lot of great ideas, stories, inspiration, and great ideas. To my viewers, I hope I've earned the privilege of your time and viewership. I know my guest has. And until next time, you know what to do.